You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Are you fed up with the corporate bullshit holding you back? Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast, the ultimate launchpad for entrepreneurs ready to seize control and unleash their creative genius. Hosted by Phil Better, the Podcast Mogul. Each week he's breaking the chains of conventional work with bold strategies, raw insights, and inspiring success stories from the digital entrepreneurs who took the risk and invested in themselves. This is your call to arms. Invest in yourself, break free from someone else's rules, and build the empire you deserve. Now let's dive headfirst into today's explosive episode.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I am, of course, your host, Phil Better, the Podcast Mogul, and today we're stepping into the world of transformation of Feng Shui with a guest whose expertise has reshaped spaces and lives all around the world. Since 2001, our guest of Sense of Space has brought his unique contemporary approach to Feng Shui to countless clients, blending ancient wisdom with insight from environmental psychology to create spaces that are truly supportive of well-being and success. From Japan to the virtual consultancy world, our guest has built a reputation for making Feng Shui practical and accessible, showing people how they can how their surroundings can elevate their lives. His international reach and innovative teachings make him a leading voice in what he calls contemporary Feng Shui, empowering people to harmonize their environment with ease and intention. And we already jumped into it before I even hit recording. I had to stop him. He was like a wild stallion running off, giving me all this information. So I want you all to welcome the amazing Mark Ainley to the show. Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
After our little snafu with technology, I'm going to jump straight into it, Mark, because if I don't, I think we're going to lose out. But I want to know, why did you decide to become the master of Feng Shui? What made you decide to go into this world? Was it something you've always wanted to, or were you a 9-to-5er and then you decided to come into the world of entrepreneurship?
Okay, so yeah, great question. Again, there's always many lengths of versions. I mean, I was never a 9-to-5 kind of person. I always knew that I was sort of outside of that mold. As a kid, I was really into science. And then when I went into, college in Montreal, where I grew up, I was just like, wow, did they make science boring? I was just like, why do I care about an inclined plane? So I switched into the arts, and I was always into both. Always admired Leonardo da Vinci for his sort of balance of art and science. And I also work in the music field. I mean, I'm a columnist for International Piano Magazine. I have a reputation as an expert in historical piano recordings. So that's kind of one of my whole other sort of things.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I'm like
a true Renaissance man.
Well, this is, my Da Vinci hello, right? I was just kind of like, again, he inspired me. But, all of those multi-focuses, I just followed my interests. And Feng Shui was just an interest that came to me when I moved to London. I'd lived in Japan for 3 years before, moved to London to get more involved in the music industry there, and moved in with a friend of a friend. And we're talking about Asian mindsets and just how I was living in Japan and like pre-internet, and learned like, oh my gosh, how we've learned things is just how we've learned things and not necessarily true. Like the whole culture, the language, everything was so completely different. And he said, have you heard of Feng Shui? And I was like, oh, what's that? Like a dish, or like, what are you talking about? And he goes up to his room and hands me a book. And I was instantly hooked, because one of the things that fascinated me about it is the capacity to implement change. And as a kid, there were always things about myself that I wanted to improve. And I was like, but how? Like, we are who we are. So how do you make changes? Like, we're not taught skills in our mainstream education that I think we should. I think there should be consciousness management, which I think is the biggest issue on the planet right now. People will point to, varying aspects of hate or the environment or all of these social things. Everything is a result of consciousness management. How do we manage our emotions? How do we control our thoughts? Or how do we, deal with what's going on in our inner world and then change our behavior? And Feng Shui was something where I was all of a sudden like, well, what do you mean doing things in the space you live changes how you feel or changes circumstances? It speaks to a connectivity. In terms of being an entrepreneur, that was never my thought. It was just kind of happened because I decided to do my training when I met a really great teacher when I moved back to Canada. And, I just started helping my friends and helping people. And it's like, well, people are getting some benefit from what I do. So I just did it as an add-on. And then next thing I know, my friends who are in Japan are saying, people are really into Feng Shui here. You should come over here. And then, one thing led to another, as is life. So that was kind of it. It wasn't planned. I often say, Feng Shui found me. And I'm just also going to note that I avoid the use of the word master because I think it really implies authority over. Yes, I have mastery at what I do. I've been doing it 20 plus years. So, unless you're really bad at something and don't improve, you generally master some skills over a period of time. So I like to think that I have mastery, but I have a really collaborative approach because, I'm not walking in and sort of, as people would imagine a Feng Shui consultant, it's like, get rid of that. Destroy that, sort of, no, you can't do that,
Does it bring you joy, the Mary Co way?
Yeah, well, that's it, and she's been really misunderstood. She's absolutely brilliant. But I think people have thought that what she does, for example, is telling you to get rid of stuff. She's not. She's focused on what are you keeping. So when you focus on the essential, the inessential just kind of
disappears.
Your relationship with it changes. And it's all about relationship. What's your relationship with your environment? What's your relationship with the objects in your space? What's your relationship with yourself, essentially? And how can you recognize that the outside world is reflecting back to you your beliefs, your choices, and so on? And the one space that you really have control over, which is your home environment, not for everybody, because some people are unfortunately living in circumstances where they don't have control, right? Where the home is not a safe space. But ideally, that's the case. In many cases, for some people, it's only at work where they can exert some authority and autonomy. But whichever, there's some space where you can make a choice. And when you channel your consciousness, right, you channel your mindset in a way that's going to be supportive, and you recognize that you can start to make choices that create harmony around you. People pay to go to first-class environments and go to resorts and so on for a reason. They want that you pay more to go to a nicer space. That doesn't mean you need Swarovski crystal chandeliers and all of that sort of stuff at home, but you should ideally like the space. And there's stuff you wouldn't tolerate at a place that you paid for. You're paying for your home. So on a holiday, you wouldn't tolerate, wires all over the place or a mess or what. Why do we tolerate things at home? Mm-hmm. And you end up sending yourself a message that this is what I'm willing to tolerate. I'm willing to tolerate less than the best when I actually have autonomy in the space. So I know.
Wow.
I can go.
That just blew my mind.
Yeah, there's usually a few things with Feng Shui. I think that people really think that Feng Shui is just, hang some wind chimes and get some lucky bamboo and some trinkets and that's it. It's really, really much deeper. It really is about your connectivity with the surroundings and the fact that, everything you look at triggers an association in your mind. And so, use that well. Do you know how much the cost was for Super Bowl commercial airtime?
If I'm not mistaken, it was, I want to say something around 30 million or something.
A little less, 7 million for 30 seconds. So that's $233,000 a second just for the airtime. Production costs would be more. These companies would not be spending that kind of money on producing commercials if 30 seconds of combining image, sound, color, messaging didn't have an effect on how people think and feel. So what's the cost of what you look at for weeks, months, and years?
Priceless. Your sanity, your well-being.
That's it.
Things that you can't even put a price tag on.
And this is really it, right? I mean, this is it. And again, it doesn't have to satisfy the Feng Shui consultant or IGTV or designers or whatever. You're the one who has to like it. It's your space. It has to reflect you. So, making choices that are aligned with how you are and who you want to be, so that you can draw out of yourself who you really are and have that reflected, then, you can go out into the world a little more harmonized and carry some of that. It's like, do you remember as a kid going into your friends' homes and every home had a smell?
Yes.
It's so weird. Like, as adults, we don't notice that to the same degree. Like, we've desensitized, but it's like, I just remember everybody's home had a smell. So if you imagine your home has a smell, but that smell is really the energy of the home, you're kind of marinating that. You go out into the world, you've got that, that's your aroma, and if there's some balance and all of that in the home, you're taking that out into the world and you're spreading some vibes that are a bit more integrated, I'd like to say.
Like, that was a memory you just unlocked, because when you said it, I remember walking to my friend's house and his nonna would live with him. And so you would walk in and there was just fresh pasta, the smell of fresh pasta. Wow. And I've never noticed that as an adult walking to anybody's house or anywhere and noticing the smell, because it's just not something. Wow. I'm going to do that. Next time I walk into a friend's place, I'm going to notice the small.
Exactly.
Be really weird.
I know. Do you remember also how, like, every friend's mother made, like, if they made hot chocolate or baked chocolate chip cookies, like, it's all the same ingredients, but they always taste different. Yeah. When somebody else makes them. It's all, milk, cocoa, sugar. And yet the balance and everything changes. And that's what we're able to do in our homes. We all have floors and walls and windows and all of that sort of stuff. But, like, what's your way of creating a space and expressing yourself? Just like, we all have more or less, same physical features, but we're all different. But we also have similarities. So how do we balance that same and difference? And I think, the home is really, really important for us, being able to recharge our batteries. We all know sort of, nowadays, how much is like you run out of juice, right? You need to recharge. It's kind of like one of the major currencies. Where's there an outlet in the recharge cable, right? It's at home for yourself, but it can be anywhere. So, but I think the home is important for that, recharging your batteries and powering up.
With being at home, and a lot of the entrepreneurs I speak with, they do work from home. Mm-hmm. So there is that, work-life balance, which you mentioned prior, before we started, that you don't believe in the work-life balance.
I think the term carries with it some unconscious associations that aren't really great. I believe in the concept of balance, most definitely. That's really what Feng Shui is all about. But work and life, if you dichotomize those, and, our consciousness, human consciousness is pretty polarized. We see it in politics. We see it everywhere. We live in a polarized world. We have up, we have down, we have left, we have right. And Feng Shui, that's all about yin and yang, that black and white symbol that most folks have seen. I have a whole big seminar on that one that's a bit of a mind blower. But if work is dichotomized with life, death is dichotomized with life. So why isn't it just life balance? You're just balancing your life, and you're balancing your personal life, your professional life, your romantic life, your health, all of these different aspects of your life. It's just balancing your life. But the fact that work is then isolated, I walk into people's, when I consult, either in person, I walk in, and otherwise I walk in on Zoom or FaceTime, and digitally walk into somebody's space. And, in the workspaces, you often find it can be really functional. And then people are just, you're going through the motions because the workspace is not really alive. And quite often there's gaps in the function. Right? If you need to reach something or bend over, sort of, in an uncomfortable position to grab something that you need, you're going to avoid it. because it makes you physically uncomfortable. So then it's also emotionally and mentally making you feel uncomfortable. So, why don't you bring life to work and work to life? Enliven the space that you're in, personalize it. Scientific American magazine years ago, probably 15 years ago, did a feature when employees were permitted to decorate their cubicles or their workspaces in an office. They were more productive. I mean, duh. And it doesn't mean that, I'm not really into some of the snarky stuff, like personalize it with the whole don't talk to me until my coffee is down to sort of, snark stuff that's kind of tolerant, it condones negative behavior and not wanting to be at work. Or I wish I was on this beach kind of posters and so on, postcards. But really, things that inspire you, things that motivate you, having a plant. I've got a plant on the corner of my desk and some other decor. And there needs to be that balance. And that's what the work-life balance is for me. And when it came to, COVID is really what got me more active with digital work. I had my first distance consultation to Japan in 2004, so it was before Skype. It mailed me photos, and we did it on the phone. But then there was Skype, and now Zoom. But when people were working at home, I was like, okay, yeah, but make sure you're not living at work. If you're having to work on the dining table, you're not commuting right now, so your commute time is devoted to putting work away, so you can live at home again. I have a whole, trainings and everything on home workspaces and offices and so on. But I think this concept of work-life, why are they opposed? It's just balance your life.
I like that. When did you particularly feel that your life was coming into balance?
I think
to be able, obviously, I guarantee that it's ongoing because it's just trying to keep your weight at a certain level, keeping it balanced. You're always working towards it. When did you feel that you got to a point where it was you were close to that perfection of balance? Because perfection doesn't exist in nature, doesn't exist in humans. So I hate using the word perfect, but you get to that point where it's like you feel like, I'm balanced, at least enough to be comfortable that I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
It's a good question. I really think it's ongoing. I feel like, I can consider that, maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I was going to Japan 2 or 3 times a year, and the work there is super fulfilling and, enjoying that, and then able to sort of really focus on health at home and, sort of spot, doing work on Zoom and in person. But I find that, I'm feeling more balanced in myself now than even a month ago or 5 years ago. It's a tricky question. I think that as well with Feng Shui, this is part of the whole thing. And, you're aware of the lack of perfection, and, this is really, perfection's a trap. It doesn't exist. In Chinese philosophy, they say, true perfection appears imperfect. And in, Middle Eastern, in Islamic art, in their carpets and so on, they'll always put a flaw in deliberately, because perfection is too, it's not meant for this plane that we're living in. So I probably lost where I was going with that. I think that it's, I had these these wonderful experiences all the time, and it changes. My relationship with what my ideal is constantly changes. And I think that people think Feng Shui, that's where I was going. People think Feng Shui is a one-time only thing. It's an ongoing process, right? Just think, okay, you cleaned your room. Great. Now the room's clean. It's nice. It's not dusty, and it vacuumed, and it smells great. Great. I'm never going to do that again. Not how it works. Right?
I wish it was like that.
Not a fan of dusting and washing dishes. I'll be honest with that, right? It's not my favorite thing. But, when you can elevate all of those mundane things to an art and to actually an enjoyable experience, that's where you're actually really mastering the art of living. And living really is as an art. Your life is a work of art, an expression of, creativity. We were somehow out of nothingness, here we are. So there's some creativity that happened and that I think we express. So, I put on a podcast that I might think I don't have the time to listen to this. Yeah, well, I need to dust. So, okay, that's what I do. So it becomes part of my personal development. So I think that, Feng Shui is not a one-time only thing. I can have, this art will be it's in the right place. Yeah, but after a while, then it gets stale. Buy some fresh vegetables. We know what happens, right? You put it in the bottom drawer of the fridge and it's not a crisper, it's a rotter. And all of a sudden, the vegetables are no longer fresh. Everything has a shelf life. And that includes where we do things, includes some relationships, includes thought patterns and behavioral patterns and so on. It's just more evident when you have flowers or vegetables, what the half-life, what the lifespan is. We're not really good at that with do I really need to keep this cup? It's yeah, I really love this cup. So definitely keeping this mug and the coffee that's in it. Well, no, that's going to that's the constant refilling, right?
That's what renews it and keeps it fresh.
Here I am talking about, life enhancing energy. It's really just
yeah, just stick it straight into
yeah.
I'm wondering, with what you do, you mentioned how you listen to a podcast that can help you develop who you are, become better. And obviously with Feng Shui, you're constantly evolving and becoming a better version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the more, I want to say, mundane things that you do to help you, maybe on a daily basis, weekly basis, that you do to invest in yourself, to become the better version of yourself, to, keep this balance going of being Mark, the Feng Shui expert, and Mark, the human being, and becoming the best version of yourself?
Good question. I'm not sure exactly what the answer is going to be. And this is kind of what a lot of life is like, right? It's we find out by doing it and by speaking about it sometimes. I mean, exercise is key. I meditate daily. I've had an active meditation practice for 20 plus years, so about an hour every morning. And it helps to have some training, which I do. I think that, listening to music is key. Reading the news, but not getting obsessed with it. Anything that's going on outside, I was just, if it triggers me, it's great. What's the trigger? What am I learning about myself? What is it that I value? I'm enjoying listening to more podcasts now. And I'm also I'm often so busy that I'm just no, I need to turn off all the notifications and watch a movie, watch a program. One of the things that I love to do is go to a movie, even alone. Go to a cinema, because it's forced phone off, even though some people didn't get that memo, that it's not looking at a screen, totally engaged in another story and outside of mine. And then whenever I leave, I've always got some associations and some reconnections. So I think that, time off the screens is super important, reading books, listening to things. But I think, the quest for improvement, Mark Manson, I think, is a genius. And he's talked about this, how the quest for self-improvement can really be a trap, and you can be invalidating yourself as you constantly try to improve yourself. So it's a very delicate balance. How you do this is how, I'm okay where I am, we're always doing our best, and then we do better. So, we're not trying to get better because we're not good enough now. It's no, I'd like to improve that. And so the challenging self thing, just comes I'm listening to these podcasts because I'm interested in these podcasts. I go see a movie because I know it's good for me to be away from my screen. I watch a program, I disconnect the internet, or I do all these kinds of things. Reading a book, remember books? There are these physical.
I love books. I'm a book nerd.
I was in India at the beginning of the year, and the books are really cheap there.
Oh, good to know.
Oh my God. Go and take a spare suitcase, because they've got some deals with publishers. They've got the international bestsellers. They're all in slightly smaller form and hardbacks, and you're paying $5 for a hardback. And I was I was really pushing the limit of my weight allowance and it was the books. And I just love the analog thing. I think we're way too much in the digital world. And this is kind of where ties in with my Feng Shui. We need to be physically engaged with the environment and something physical where we're seeing that change in the physical world. I occasionally have friends who phone me, which seems really strange now since I'm, Gen X and sort of remember actual phone calls and not know who's phoning and the delight of being able to hang up.
I miss the delight. I'm an elder millennial. I miss the when you're just so angry, you just want to hang up and you're like, aggressively pressing a button just doesn't feel the same.
It's not the same, and like leaving the phone off the hook. That's how we blocked people. But doing things in the physical world is really important. So my friends will phone me and it's like, I hear a voice. I think one of the things we haven't quite clued into is that when people are texting us, the voice is lost because everybody's font is the same. If they were writing us a letter or a postcard, their individual character is there. And this is, I think, part of what's going on in our culture with the excessive digitization is I think people's sense of identity and individuality is somehow being quashed by the medium because we all have the same font.
Person who comes up with personalized fonts for texting and all that is going to be supremely rich and marked down in history. Because I agree with you.
What's 10%?
If you're listening to this, both Mark and Phil get 10% of the royalties because we came up with the idea. We just don't know how to implement it. But I do feel you with the loss of physical medium. I remember going to Blockbuster on a Friday night, renting renting a movie, hoping the movie you wanted to rent is there.
And hoping that it's actually, you're going to enjoy it and not also reading things online and not trying something because you haven't read a review yet. We're lacking the sense of adventure and the comfortability of not knowing. Like the adventure of not knowing. I honestly think, I mentioned consciousness management earlier. Hollywood's had a role to play with this. Like we have movie trailers that show the entire story. Like they show plot twists in a trailer.
Yeah.
Where's the surprise? Like why? One of the biggest grossing movies, among the biggest grossing movies, but certainly it was for a while. I mean, Avatar, you saw nothing. You didn't even see what the creatures looked like in the trailer. It was all just flashes of things. Black Panther as well, the second one. Amazing trailer where you just see these snippets of things, but there's no storyline. That's, but you don't see, you see a couple fighting and everything, and then you see them kiss. It's like, spoiler alert. Like you have all these spoilers. So what's the point? So then you're training people to not be comfortable with uncertainty. Well, guess what? All adventure, all life, everything that we really, really enjoy, we didn't see coming. Right? You go on a trip and you do something, not knowing and being comfortable with not knowing is, I think it's really something to cultivate. And, right now in politics and global circumstances and everything, everybody's really busy, trying to know. So we don't know. We don't know anything. We never know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to, you don't know what's going to come out of my mouth at the end of the sentence.
Other than a period.
Or not. I might just keep going or trail off. Like that, sort of sound like an Australian, sort of go up at the end of the sentence, or French people can do that as well, just go up.
Living in Montreal, we see that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So, I just think that getting back to the physical medium really helps. It helps to ground us. You're holding something physical. And again, I'm not talking just being materialistic. I'm not talking, about buy things. And that's same with my approach to Feng Shui. I'm not saying buy, and just, it's really, I start with what you use. But I still think that having that engaged relationship where not everything is digital, not everything is electronic, our bodies are still
physical.
We're still physical, but also our programming is, I've heard a great expression recently. You can take the person out of the Stone Age and you can't take the Stone Age out of the person. I mean, our programming is still so much like what it was forever ago. nor programmed to see threats. There's no saber-toothed tiger around the corner, but, we react to things in a certain way. So doing things to sort of, bring some nature and bring some natural balance into your environment helps to soothe the nervous system in a way that most people are not really attuned to. They're just sort of doing what the designers say or what this magazine says or what the celebrity says. But there's more to it than that. And it's really important. I think it's one of the biggest things for self-care is slowing down, creating a space where you can slow down and recharge, and that nurtures your unique individuality and your natural core expression of yourself.
I love it. I also, as you were speaking and talking about the last point, bringing the magazines, the celebrities, the designers, and the loss of being fearful, because the unknown is fearful and we don't like fear. And I think people are fearful of their own identity. And I feel, and I'm asking you this because you're the expert, but with the Feng Shui going into that, you're stepping into the fear because you're going, what is my balance? How will this balance for me as an individual? Because I'm pretty sure if I go into your place, Mark, I'm going to feel at ease because it's made to feel at ease because you're understand the art of Feng Shui, but I won't be fully at ease unless I make it my own, where I put the stuff that I want and be
absolutely
put myself, in essence, put my soul out for everybody to see.
Yeah, and ideally first for you. What concerns me is this whole concept of design trends, that you would want to do something in your home to satisfy an external metric that somebody else decided. A designer who's never going to step into your home and you're doing, putting that color because it's trendy this year. I mean, okay, if you want to, but the only great thing that can happen from trends is, hey, a new color's available, and that might be a color you actually like, but it might be a color that was in like years ago, but who cares if it's in? I mean, it's like, what is it that reflects you? So you in your, if you can walk into my space and feel comfortable, even though it's not your aesthetic, but you might not. I mean, I'm a bit of a maximalist. I'm not a Feng Shui minimalist like Marie Kondo, like kind of style. I love her work. The design aesthetic is not my aesthetic. And that's fine, right? Everybody should have their own. And there's just certain principles you follow. I think we know what we said about, being wrong. And I think one of the biggest challenges, I joke when I sometimes say that something is wrong shui, just because one of my clients came up with it and I just thought it was cute, but I really try to get off of the right wrong dichotomy and just say, no, is this really supporting you or not? And I think that's what people are fearful of. They're afraid that I'm going to come in and say that something is wrong and that they can't have what they like. And I think it all boils down to what's kind of at the root of a lot of the discord now, which includes politics and, what's happening in society, is this phrase that we heard as kids that really is poorly language, which is, you are wrong. No, what you said is wrong. What you said's not correct. I don't see it that way. Or there's all these other things, but the being wrong, so that it strikes at the core of your being, it's such a poor use of language. Same with I am angry as opposed to I feel angry. Like there's a self that has a feeling and the feeling is temporary and the self is still there. So, being wrong, no, it's fine, but your home is your home. You get to do what you want. I'll give you the information that I think can help you and you get to make the choice because it's your home and it's your life, not mine. So,
Mark, I'm pretty sure we can go on for about 2 more hours.
You could probably.
I would love to, but I'm very cognizant of your time and my audience's time. So I'm going to hit you with 2 more questions. Where do you see Sense of Space and Mark in 10 years?
Again, it's that I don't know. I really hope, I'm not into the whole, I have to build my company, I have to build my brand. Like this is going to seem like counterintuitive for a lot of folks and business folks. I'm into, I want this information out there. And I want people to sort of recognize and to feel empowered. And if I play a role in that and somebody else is more visible, then so be it. I'm just wanting, I think there is starting to be a shift taking place in the design world, and people recognizing how important their home is, which they did after September 11th, actually. That's when real estate prices jumped because people realized, hey, outside world's not controllable.
Mm-hmm.
I want a space where I feel safe. So I don't know where I see my quote unquote business per se. I'm really hoping to have more visibility, or at the very least to be able to help these concepts have more visibility. I'm right now I'm about to launch a podcast and some pre-recorded courses online, because I've basically, taught live, and I'm aware that, some people maybe won't purchase a course if they're not able to attend live, even though there's recordings. So I'm just going to create some tiered programs so that people can choose what interests them, have an ongoing conversation like this. As you've noticed, I'm able to talk about anything for however long. So I think a podcast format will probably suit that sort of expression of all of these concepts and let people indulge while they dust, maybe. And so that's all I can say for in 10 years. I mean,
Love it.
It's a little scary. I mean, I'm turning 55. I don't necessarily come across as my age, but I'm turning 55 this month. So that means 65 in 10 years. I have no idea. I certainly don't plan on feeling whatever our concept of that age was when we were kids. I think that's all changed.
Yeah, that has definitely changed. And by the way, you don't look a day over 35. Okay, maybe 40, maybe 40. I'll give you an elder millennial. Because the gray hairs. I got the temples. That's why I shaved. That's here.
I blame Apple's the iPhone and the computer cameras for adding gray. I think it's the filter.
Yeah, that's it. It's the computers are adding gray. It doesn't add 10 pounds anymore. They add gray.
That's it.
They add 10 years.
Exactly.
I would love to know, Mark. I have your 10-year-old self right here. What advice would you like to hand back to that 10-year-old Mark, what you were going through back then?
There's so many things. I love this. 10 years was a pretty pivotal age. And I love this question. I think it's brilliant. One of the things would be, you can connect with people and adjust how you speak for each person to connect with them without changing yourself. Like, your communication style can change. It doesn't mean you change yourself. Like, the words you use with each person, the tone of voice, the way you language things and everything. I think we tend to sometimes become like, this is that work-life balance thing. You become a different person at work just because maybe you wear certain kind of clothing, or that's more formal, or you speak more formally. But you're not necessarily changing your being. I think people sometimes do. And I think that's one of the things that can make us uncomfortable. So I think just to be aware, you can still be yourself, even as you do things differently with different people.
I love that. That's friggin' genius. Reminds me of I have a bit of acting. It's like walking onto a role and changing. You're not changing who you are. You're just saying the words differently.
But consider, I mean, who had the hard time coming out of the Joker? Heath Ledger. Right? Like, this is the challenge with when you do the method acting, or when you do something like that, like there becomes like there isn't the separation of, self and role, and it can become really entwined, and that's risky. And I think we all do that to some degree, right? We take on the role and we become the role, as opposed to, no, you're still yourself.
I'm just Phil stepping into this role as Phil the businessman, stepping back, or Mark the Feng Shui king.
Yourself to work, right? And it's yourself.
I love it. Again, bringing back that work-life balance doesn't exist. It's the life balance and being balance. Mark, I'm going to jump off stage. I want you to let my audience know where they can find you, how they can connect with you, how they can take their surroundings and make it more feng shui so that they can have that balance that they're may be lacking or maybe wanting more of in their life. The floor, sir, is yours.
Thank you so much. So you can find me on my website, senseofspace.com. There's links to my social media pages there, Instagram and Facebook. Happy if you sign up and click a like and make comments on any of the posts. I'm a little less active on social media these days as I start to move more towards less algorithmic means of reaching people. So stay tuned for podcasts and online courses that'll all be linked on my website, Sense of Space.
I love it. Mark, I want to thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure talking balance with you, and it was fantastic, and definitely going to be checking out your podcast while I'm dusting, because I think it's going to be great. So I thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
To my audience, make sure you check out the show notes down below to connect with Mark, as well as listen to his podcast. I'm definitely suggesting that one because it's going to be probably at the top of my podcast list, but make sure you check out those show notes. And as always, remember to invest in yourself.
Thanks for joining us on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. The Podcast Mogul reminds you that your journey to freedom and success starts with one powerful move: investing in yourself. If today's episode sparked your fire, hit that follow button on Spotify and drop us a comment. Share your wins, your challenges, and what drives you to break free from the corporate grind. Remember, you're your best investment. Always invest in yourself because your potential is limitless. Until next time, keep hustling and take control of your destiny.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.